Isabella adjusted her dress nervously as she glanced at the time again. It was 6:58 p.m. Her heart fluttered with anticipation, mixed with a touch of anxiety. First dates always had that effect on her, especially blind dates. Her best friend Maddie had insisted she meet this guy, Aiden. Maddie had said he was different, genuine, kind. But all Isabella knew was his name, a few texts, and that he was supposed to meet her in front of the cafe on Main Street at 7 p.m. sharp. She'd chosen her outfit carefully, not too flashy, not too simple. The cafe behind her was one of the most romantic spots in town, known for its candlelit ambience and vintage jazz playlist. She felt confident. That is, until she looked up and saw a guy pedaling toward her on a bicycle. A bicycle, not a motorcycle, not a car, a bicycle. He came to a gentle stop in front of her, his face slightly flushed from exertion, his curls tousled by the wind, and a charming, lopsided smile plastered on his face. "Isabella," he asked, dismounting. "Hi, I'm Aiden." For a second, Isabella just stared at him, caught between confusion and the absurdity of the moment. "Hi," she managed, her voice steady though her thoughts weren't. "You rode here?" He nodded, brushing off imaginary dust from his khakis. "Yeah, it's a beautiful evening. Why pollute it with a car?" He said it so casually, so genuinely, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. She blinked, trying to process it. Part of her wanted to laugh. Another part was oddly intrigued. This wasn't the typical guy she was used to. Most of them pulled up in flashy cars, reeked of cologne, and barely asked how her day was. Aiden locked his bike to the nearby railing, then turned to her with an apologetic look. "I hope that wasn't too weird. I promise I'm not cheap or anything. I just like simplicity." Something in the way he said it made her smile. "No, it's fine. Unexpected, but fine." They walked into the cafe together. Inside, the warm lighting and soft music seemed to embrace them. Aiden pulled out her chair like a gentleman, and as the conversation started to flow, Isabella began to forget about the bicycle entirely. They talked about books, art, travel. Aiden wasn't just a talker. He was a listener. When she spoke about her dream to open a small bookshop by the sea, his eyes lit up, not with judgment, but with curiosity. He asked thoughtful questions, made her laugh, and didn't once glance at his phone. 2 hours passed like minutes. When they stepped outside, the sky was painted with hues of deep purple and orange. Aiden walked her to her car, despite his bike being parked the other way. As she reached her door, she turned to him. "Thank you, Aiden. I had a really good time." He smiled, then hesitated. "Would you like to go on another ride with me sometime? Maybe something more exciting than a cafe? There's this hilltop with the best view of the stars, but it's a bit of a hike." Isabella laughed. "Let me guess, you're biking there?" He chuckled. "Of course." She found herself nodding. "Okay, just don't expect me to pedal." "Deal." As she drove home, she couldn't stop smiling. The bicycle wasn't a red flag. It was a sign. A sign that maybe, just maybe, she'd met someone who wasn't playing a part, but truly being himself. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Their second date was a sunset hike. Aiden carried a small picnic in his backpack, complete with homemade sandwiches and thermos tea. They sat under the stars, talking about the constellations and childhood dreams. The third date was a visit to a local animal shelter where Aiden volunteered. He introduced her to an old golden retriever named Max, and when she bent down to pet the dog, she caught Aiden watching her with a softness that made her heart skip. Each date was a window into Aiden's world, a world of small joys, thoughtful gestures, and sincerity. He wasn't trying to impress. He was just sharing his life. And Isabella found herself drawn in, wanting to know more, wanting to be part of it. One evening, about a month into seeing each other, Isabella invited Aiden over to her apartment for dinner. She'd cooked her mom's famous lasagna, lit candles, and even had a record playing in the background. When Aiden arrived, again on his bike, he had a small bouquet of wildflowers and a wrapped book. "For you," he said. The book was a first edition of her favorite novel, something she'd once mentioned in passing. She was touched beyond words. After dinner, they sat on the couch, sipping wine, when Isabella finally asked, "Why the bicycle, Aiden? You never told me." He paused, looking into his glass for a moment. Then he smiled softly. "I used to have a car. A nice one. I had a high-paying job, a fancy apartment. But I was miserable. Always rushing, always stressed. One day I just stopped. Quit my job, sold my stuff, and moved here. I got the bike as a way to force myself to slow down, to notice things, like sunrises, birds, people." Isabella listened, captivated. He continued, "I know it's not glamorous, and I get weird looks sometimes, but I've never been happier. I guess. I just want a life that feels real." She leaned closer, touched by his honesty. "You've definitely made me see things differently." They kissed for the first time that night. It wasn't rushed or impulsive. It was gentle, deliberate, filled with unspoken understanding. Over the next few months, their bond deepened. They explored trails, attended local festivals, cooked together, laughed often. Isabella found herself shedding layers of expectations, the need for perfection, the urge to always look or act a certain way. With Aiden, she could just be. Then came the evening that changed everything. It was their 6-month anniversary, and Aiden insisted on planning a surprise. He told her to dress casually and meet him at the park by the lake. When she arrived, he was waiting with 2 bikes. He brought one for her this time. Hesitant but trusting, she agreed. They rode along the winding path, Aiden guiding her gently. Eventually, they reached a secluded spot where fairy lights hung from trees. A small wooden table was set with dinner, and soft music played from a speaker. Isabella gasped, overwhelmed. "Did you do all this?" He nodded, blushing. "I wanted the night to be special." As they ate, he pulled out a small box. Her breath caught. "Isabella, I know we haven't known each other forever, but in the time we have, I've felt more peace, more joy, more connection than I ever thought possible. You challenge me, inspire me, make me better. I don't want to rush things, but would you consider moving in with me?" Her eyes welled with tears, not from the offer itself, but from how thoughtfully he asked, how he respected her pace while still opening his heart. "Yes," she whispered. "I'd love that." They embraced under the stars, and from that night onward, their lives blended into one. They found a small cottage on the edge of town, surrounded by trees and wildflowers. They filled it with books, music, and the quiet sounds of a life being built slowly, intentionally. Aiden still biked everywhere, and eventually, so did Isabella. Not out of necessity, but out of love for the world, for simplicity, and for each other. What had once seemed odd, a man showing up to a date on a bicycle, had become a symbol of everything Isabella didn't know she needed: authenticity, kindness, depth. And in the end, what shocked her the most wasn't the bike, but the realization that love, real love, doesn't need to roar in with engines and speed. Sometimes it rolls in gently, on 2 wheels with a quiet smile and an open heart.